Welcome to Scaling Legends. If you're out there running a construction business and looking to scale, this deep dive is for you. So think about this. If you break your arm, the medical x-ray gives you a completely binary answer, right?
Right, yeah. Broken or not broken.
Exactly. There's a jagged white line on the film, or there isn't. But if you step into the business side of construction, well, that diagnostic machine is just fundamentally broken.
Entirely, it's a mess.
You can close out this massive commercial build or, a really complex residential remodel, look at your P&L statement that says you just netted a cool $60,000.
Sounds great on paper.
Right. But then you log into your business banking app and your account is just completely overdrawn. You are officially profitable on paper, but somehow you're poorer than when you started pouring the foundation 6 months ago.
It is, it's the absolute definition of diagnostic muddy waters. I mean, profit is an accounting fiction. Cash is reality.
Yes.
And discovering that gap between those two things, that is the single most terrifying realization a contractor can have.
It really is. So today we are opening the books on the ultimate silent killer in construction, which is this fatal mismatch between profit and cash flow.
A literal business killer.
Exactly. Our mission today is mapping out exactly how to protect your margins, force the money to actually move in the right direction, and build a machine that outlasts any single project. We're pulling from project management frameworks, industry notes, and some really targeted market intelligence specifically for contractors.
It's going to be a heavy one.
Yeah. Okay, let's unpack this, starting with the core mystery here. How is it mechanically possible to make 60 grand on paper, but, be completely unable to make payroll on a Friday?
Well, it really comes down to a timing mismatch. It's the gap between recognizing revenue and actually holding the capital.
Right.
Because profit is realized the moment an invoice is cut, right?
Right.
The expense is recorded. But cash is only realized when the check actually clears your bank.
Which takes time.
Exactly. You could show, say, $200,000 in profit for the quarter, but your receivables, the money your clients actually owe you, might be sitting on net 30 terms.
And we all know net 30 routinely stretches into 90 days.
Oh, all the time.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, your payables, the money you owe to your lumber supplier, your specialty trades, your crew, that's all due today.
Yeah.
So the business just bleeds out simply because the inflows and outflows are, they're operating on two completely different clocks.
Profit is like a photograph of a smiling family, but cash flow is a live video showing all the chaotic running around behind the scenes.
That is a perfect way to put it.
But, we talk a lot about bidding to cost. A seasoned contractor knows their material costs is down to the board foot, right?
He should, yeah.
And they know what they pay their crew per hour. So the assumption is, if I bid exactly to my cost, shouldn't I be safe? Shouldn't the cash eventually just sort itself out?
What's fascinating here is that bidding strictly to your baseline costs is actually a massive psychological trap. Yeah, because you have to predict your true profit before a project even starts. And most contractors, they completely undercalculate their burden.
Okay, break that down for me.
So you don't just multiply your estimated labor hours by a worker's hourly wage. You have to use a fully burdened labor rate.
Right, which means factoring in things like FICA, workers.
Exactly. General liability insurance, health benefits, even the cell phone stipends.
Wow, yeah.
And you even need to factor in the fractional wear and tear on the F-250 they drove to the site.
That's incredibly specific.
You have to be. And then for materials, you have to bake in a mandatory 5 to 8% waste factor because, let's face it, site perfection is a myth.
Oh, absolutely. Materials get dropped or they get cut wrong.
Or left out in the rain overnight.
Yeah.
And then finally, you have to calculate dynamic overhead.
And that's a huge blind spot, right? Because the problem isn't knowing what overhead is. The problem is that contractors treat overhead as this fixed yearly administrative expense.
Yes. They just look at it annually.
They don't dynamically allocate it as a burden rate per specific labor hour on a per project basis. Like, they aren't asking, how much of the office lease does this specific bathroom remodel actually need to pay for?
Exactly. And once you run that highly specific formula, you arrive at your true baseline cost.
Okay.
And the golden rule of survival dictates that if the gap between your bid and those true costs is less than 15%, you are essentially working for free.
Working for free, man. But 15% sounds like a massive buffer to someone just trying to win a competitive bid against like 3 other hungry local contractors.
It does, but it's mandatory.
Let's walk through a scenario then. Say a guy gets nervous, right? He bids at an 8% margin just to win the job. What is the actual mechanism that destroys his cash flow there?
The mechanism is inevitable project friction. At an 8% margin, one bad weather week completely erases your profit.
Wow, just 1 week.
Yeah. Think about it. If it rains for 5 days, your labor might be idle, but they're still drawing partial pay or salaries.
Right, you still have to pay your guys.
And your heavy equipment rentals. Those continue to accrue daily rates sitting in the mud.
Oh, man.
Plus, your milestone draw gets pushed back a week, so that 8% buffer just evaporates instantly. You transition from running a profitable job to actively financing the client's build using your own company's working capital. Cash flow kills more construction companies than bad workmanship ever will.
That's terrifying. But if 15% is the absolute survival threshold, why do contractors naturally panic and drop their prices when cash gets tight?
Panic is a powerful thing.
It really brings us to this debate between chasing volume versus defending margin. Because it feels so counterintuitive, shouldn't keeping the crew busy with more jobs inherently generate more cash?
That seems like it would.
Right. If my cash is dwindling, my immediate instinct as a business owner is to aggressively bid 3 more jobs at a discount just to get those initial mobilization deposits. Like, I want to pump more water into the system.
I hear that all the time, but taking low margin work for an initial cash infusion, it just creates a delayed, massive liability. Busy does not equal profitable.
Right.
When you take on 3 extra projects at a suboptimal margin, you fundamentally increase your overhead.
Because you're stretching your resources.
Exactly. You're forcing your A-team to spread themselves thin across multiple sites, which means, what do you have to do? You have to hire unvetted B-tier crews just to fill the gaps.
And then quality drops.
Quality drops, mistakes happen, callbacks increase, and project friction just skyrockets. So that initial deposit you wanted so badly, it's burned through in weeks.
Leaving you managing 3 chaotic sites with no profit margin to absorb the mistakes.
Precisely. Smart Business Automator's Market Intelligence Report actually tracks this exact behavior.
Yeah, I saw that. The data there is wild.
It is. According to Smart Business Automator's Market Intelligence Report, contractors who chase volume below 12% net margins have a failure rate 3 times higher than those who hold the line at 18% or more.
3 times higher. And that holds true even if the higher margin contractors take on significantly fewer projects over the course of the year.
Yeah, because taking on fewer projects allows you to maintain absolute quality control. When you do less work at a higher margin, your crews are focused, your schedule is tight, and you actually build the cash reserves necessary to weather the inevitable storms.
You aren't constantly robbing Peter to pay Paul.
Exactly. A construction company scaling on volume without margin is basically operating a localized Ponzi scheme.
Oh, wow.
You're just relying on the deposit of the next job to finish the drywall on the last job.
That is a dangerous game to play. But holding the line on an 18% margin means absolutely nothing if the client doesn't actually hand over the check.
That's the other half of the equation, yes.
Contractors are builders. They're rarely trained debt collectors. So how do we physically force the cash to flow on time?
You have to bulletproof your inflows before you ever mobilize a single piece of equipment.
Yeah.
And it is entirely dictated by the contract.
Okay, so what goes in the contract?
First, you mandate front-loaded draws. Your initial draw must cover all mobilization, permitting, and the procurement of your initial long-lead materials. Never start a job using your own money.
Because you never finance the client's real estate investment.
Never. Second, payments must be strictly milestone-based. They have to be tied to physical, verifiable deliverables on the job site.
Like when the foundation passes inspection.
Exactly. The foundation passes inspection, a payment is automatically triggered, rough-in is complete, payment triggered. You never use calendar-based payments.
Why not calendar-based? It seems easier to track.
Because if you set a payment for, say, the first of the month, but you've had massive supply chain delays on your lumber drop, the calendar will trigger an invoice that the client is absolutely going to dispute.
Oh, because the visual progress doesn't match the date on the invoice.
Right. Milestones remove that ambiguity.
That makes logical sense. But hitting a milestone, sending an invoice, and then hearing just absolute silence from the client, I mean, that's the reality of the business. How do you handle the slow pay without turning into a full-time collections agency?
You build a mechanical sequence into the contract terms, and you enforce it without a shred of emotion.
A mechanical sequence, walk me through that.
Day 31 past due. An automated, friendly reminder goes out from your accounting software. Day 45, a firm recorded phone call from company leadership. Day 60, Work on the site officially stops. Day 75. The attorney sends a formal demand letter.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, and I have to push back on this.
Sure.
Stopping work at 60 days on a massive developer site sounds like professional suicide. I mean, in practice, if you pull your framing crew off a site because of a 60-day overdue invoice, the developer isn't going to suddenly respect your boundaries.
You'd think that, but
They're going to threaten to fire you. They'll withhold the remainder of the contract, trash your reputation to every other developer in the county. How does a contractor actually survive that kind of standoff?
if we connect this to the bigger picture, the leverage fundamentally shifts when you remove the emotion and rely on the mechanics of the contract and the law.
Explain that.
Setting these exact expectations up front means the client already agreed to the stop work protocol. If you call a developer on day 60 to demand money, it feels personal and desperate if it isn't documented.
True.
But if it's in the signed agreement, you simply blame the system. You tell them, look, our operational protocol automatically halts labor and material procurement when an account hits 60 days. I need this cleared immediately so I can override the system and get the guys back on your site.
Oh, that's brilliant. It frames you as a highly structured professional instead of an angry contractor. And from a leverage standpoint, the sunk cost for the developer is massive. I mean, firing you at day 60, trying to source a new framing crew mid-project, getting them up to speed, and dealing with the inevitable mechanics lay-in you are going to file on their property.
It's a nightmare for them.
Yeah, it'll cost them exponentially more in interest carry costs than simply paying your overdue invoice. You're using the system to enforce the boundary.
You have to.
But to enforce a 60-day stop work order, you have to actually know who is 60 days late. If you wait for an accountant to hand you a quarterly report, you've already missed the window.
Oh, definitely. Waiting for a quarterly report is like driving a truck down the highway while only looking in the rearview mirror.
Right.
You need a weekly financial dashboard to monitor the health of the reservoir. There are 3 key ratios you must track. First is your current ratio.
Which is assets over liabilities, right?
Yes. Your current assets divided by your current liabilities. You need this to sit above 1.5. So for every dollar you owe to suppliers or crew right now, you must have $1.50 available to deploy.
Got it. What's the second?
Second is your accounts receivable aging. You want absolute 0, sitting in the over 60 days bucket.
Because your stop work protocol should prevent it from ever getting there in the first place.
Exactly.
And the third ratio is the backlog to capacity ratio, right? The sweet spot is holding 6 to 9 months of contracted work in your pipeline relative to what your current crews can actually physically build.
That's the sweet spot. If that backlog dips below 6 months, the psychological panic sets in and you start bidding too low just to win work.
And if it stretches beyond 9 months?
You start missing schedule deadlines because you simply don't have the manpower and your reputation takes a huge hit.
Okay, so ratios are key. What about reserves?
You have to mandate cash reserves. The baseline minimum is 3 months of fixed overhead payroll, rent, insurance, and equipment leases sitting in liquid cash.
3 months minimum.
The ideal target is 6 months. If your business cannot survive 90 days without a single new dollar of revenue entering the system, you are one catastrophic supply chain failure away from closing your doors.
Yeah, that's a wake-up call. I want to bring up the line of credit, though, because so many staling contractors practically live off their bank lines.
Too many of them do.
And I always say a line of credit isn't a spare tire, it's more like a surge tank in a plumbing system.
That's a good analogy.
Right. It's designed to handle a temporary drop in water pressure when everyone flushes at once, like making a massive payroll on a Friday before a client's wire transfer hits on Monday. But it cannot generate new water. If your business isn't pumping enough organic revenue into the system, the surge tank eventually runs dry.
Exactly. A credit line is a bridge, not a lifeline. It must be secured when your financials look pristine, long before you actually need it.
Not when you're desperate.
Right. If you're routinely tapping your credit line just to cover your standard operational payroll, you do not have a cash flow problem. You have a fundamental pricing problem, and you're subsidizing your clients' projects with bank debt.
So how do you foresee those drops in water pressure before they happen?
You implement the 15-minute, 8-week Friday forecast. Every Friday afternoon, you mathematically project your cash position.
So you list every expected cash inflow for the next 8 weeks based on your milestone schedule?
Right. And then you list every expected outflow payroll, vendor terms, quarterly taxes.
And the mechanism there is just pure visibility. Like, if you are in week 1 and you see that in week 4 your payroll liability is $40,000, but your next milestone draw from the big commercial job isn't scheduled to hit until week 6.
You have instantly identified a major pothole.
Right. You now have 3 full weeks to either push the client to accelerate a milestone, delay a vendor payment, or strategically tap the surge tank.
Exactly. But doing this manually, pulling that data from 5 different disconnected spreadsheets, checking the bank portal, and cross-referencing your project management software, it's an administrative nightmare.
Nobody has time for that.
They don't. And Smart Business Automator's Market Intelligence Report highlights how top-performing contractors are actually entirely abandoning manual spreadsheets.
What are they using instead?
They utilize real-time benchmarking and automated cash flow dashboards that pull data natively. It gives them a live view of how their metrics stack up against industry peers without sacrificing their Friday nights to data entry.
Which brings us to a huge point. We just outlined a system that requires tracking weekly ratios, enforcing 60-day payment stops, and doing meticulous Friday forecasts.
That's a lot of work.
Realistically, a contractor running 3 active job sites doesn't have 15 spare hours a week to do that math. The administrative burden quickly becomes the new bottleneck to scaling.
It really does.
So how does a company track all of this without hiring a massive, expensive back-office administrative team?
The solution to scaling the back office without drowning your margins in administrative salaries is leveraging artificial intelligence.
AI in construction. Okay.
Yeah. We're looking at platforms like Smart Business Automator, which is an AI-powered ecosystem built specifically to solve the data fragmentation problem for construction companies.
Let's talk about the actual mechanism of that. Because when you say AI in construction, it usually conjures up images of robots swing hammers or like laying bricks.
Yeah, Terminator with a nail gun.
Yeah, exactly. But the real revolution is in document intelligence. How does an AI actually process a construction site?
It uses natural language processing and vector databases to understand the deep context of a document, rather than just performing simple keyword search.
Give me an example of how that works in the field.
Think about a superintendent in a muddy truck who dictates a rambling voice note about, say, the HVAC team delaying the framing crew.
Standard software just saves that audio file in a folder somewhere.
Exactly. But this AI parses the audio, understands that the HVAC delay directly impacts the critical path of the master schedule, flags a potential budget variance for the delayed framers, and then it automatically drafts a formal request for information, or RFI, for the project manager to review.
Wow. So it takes unstructured field chaos and turns it into structured, actionable data.
Automatically. It tags and sorts the latest versions of permits and spec sheets so the team isn't accidentally building off outdated blueprints.
Which happens way too often.
All the time.
Mm-hmm.
And because of the API integrations, it pushes that data directly into the accounting and ERP software. It completely eliminates the manual data entry that causes invoicing errors in the first place.
But, trusting an AI with highly technical project documents feels like a massive risk. Construction is a high-stakes physical environment. If a spec is misread by an algorithm, a load-bearing wall could literally fail.
That's a valid concern, but the AI is not designed to replace the human project manager. It is designed to empower them by doing the heavy lifting of data organization.
So it's more of an assistant.
Exactly. The algorithm's job is to instantly surface the gaps, flag the conflicting architectural specs, and highlight the schedule risks. It brings the critical data to the surface so the human manager can apply their years of hard-earned intuitive field experience to make a strategic decision.
You deploy the AI to handle the tedious data sorting so the human can focus entirely on high-level risk mitigation and strategic foresight.
Precisely.
So what does this all mean? We started by recognizing that a profitable P&L is a dangerous illusion if the cash isn't actually in the bank.
Right.
We mapped out the mechanics of predicting true costs using fully burdened labor rates and dynamic overhead to ensure a minimum 15% margin. We established the absolute necessity of defending that margin rather than chasing volume and spreading your crews thin.
Volume is vanity. Margin is sanity.
Exactly. We bulletproofed our contracts with front-loaded draws, strict milestone payments, and an emotionless 60-day stop work protocol. We built a weekly financial dashboard utilizing the current ratio, the backlog to capacity sweet spot, and that Friday forecast to foresee the potholes. And finally, we explored how utilizing context-aware AI tools eliminates the administrative bottleneck, allowing you to actually scale the operation.
It really represents a complete operational transformation. But, it leaves you with a final, perhaps slightly provocative thought to consider.
Lay it on us.
If your margins are perfectly protected by strict contractual rules, if your cash flow is forecasted automatically, and if your administrative and document workflows are being seamlessly handled by an AI assistant, well, your business no longer relies on your daily physical labor or your constant micromanagement of the site.
That's true.
So, what is your true role now? Are you still a contractor trading your time for a project fee, or have you finally evolved into an investor running a self-sustaining construction machine?
The evolution from swinging the hammer to owning the machine. We'll leave you to chew on that one. If you want to keep scaling, make sure to subscribe, rate, and review this deep dive on your favorite platform. Share this with your team or a colleague who needs it. And to explore the tools we discussed today, visit smartbusinessautomator.com.